Evening, yeah, we are live for another episode of Try Imitating This. We're just trying to do it a bit different this time. I think we're going on Facebook Live this week just to see if we can get a few more live viewers. So please, hopefully you are in there and you can get on the chat and what have you. Tonight I've got two cracking guests with me. Largo, regular contributor to the show. How are we, sir?
Excellent. Can't had a little bit of a cold, but can't complain too much. It can always be worse.
We could be Blackpool supporters, so he's not particularly keen on football, I don't think, but he's a knowledgeable guy on another sport. Joe Stoller, thank you very much for being with us, mate.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Great. Yeah. Things. Have you anything exciting happened to you this week?
Well, work mostly, so the answer's no. But
oh, right. Well, yeah, work is what it is, and it does suck an awful lot of the time. It's like you'd rather be somewhere else. But there you go. Largo. Have you any excitement from you at all? Any stories or anything interesting happened?
Not really. I was having a conversation with somebody, and then it's a bit of a funny story. I was chatting to them, and things were going quite nicely. And then as soon as they found out I didn't own a business, the conversation pretty much ended. They were labouring under the misapprehension that I had, that I was better off than I am. And then once they found out I wasn't, and I said, no, my position is merely that of a teacher, the conversation promptly ended. So
was this a female of the species by any chance?
It was, yes. But I just guessed. Not all.
Sorry?
Not all.
Sorry.
Not
No. I didn't say. No, I was being sexist. I just wondered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I had a bot contact me last night as it happened, and in response to one of my posts on social media, and she said, "I saw your profile. You seem like a really nice and interesting, funny guy," and I'm like, "That person, that's suspicious," straight away. And I thought this person said, what is it? You strike me as a really nice woman, and I'd like to get to know you better. I was like, okay, a really nice woman, right? Okay, and I've written back. Thanks for that. However, I can assure you, I'm not a really nice woman. In fact, in many ways, I'm a terrible woman. I can think of 3 right now.
The way it goes, man. It's the way of the world.
There you go. I am to women what Cut the Crap is to Clash albums. So yes.
There's a lot of men who only want to talk to other men that are what they perceive as successful.
Oh right, yeah, it's called the Masons, mate.
A mere teacher does not quite cut it, you know.
You could be invited in.
I'd rather not be, to be honest. I'd rather just. No. I mean, you know, my motto in life is "Leave me alone."
Yeah,
just leave me alone.
"Leave Me Alone" is also one of my favourite New Order songs. One of my favourite bands. So yes, Mr. Stoller obviously gets his name from a certain Mr. Strummer from the Clash. That's correct, isn't it?
That is correct.
Yeah. And we like quite a few of the same bands. So the Smiths and New Order are probably my 2 favourite bands. I know you. So the Smiths are right up there for you.
Yeah, I followed the Smiths from start to finish. And
they were consistently good.
Well, if you look at the Smiths, the Jam, the Clash, to name 3 of my favourites, they all made this enormous glut of music in a very short period of time, 5 years maybe. And it's there, and it's this incredible block of work. And then they just, left the scene, and there's a lot to be said for that, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for getting out while you're still good, and maybe leaving the audience asking for slightly more, which is the opposite of what a hell of a lot of bands do.
Absolutely,
you too. So
a majority of the Rolling Stones stuff actually isn't very good.
No, I mean that's the thing about the Rolling Stones stopped being good in the 70s. You could argue, consistently.
I mean, the stuff they've been doing stuff since the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and it's all bad.
I remember a friend of mine went to see the Stones. This is when I was still at school, so it was that long. It was about 40 years ago. It was 81, so 43 years ago. And I remember thinking, what's he going to see them for? They're past it.
Yeah.
This was 3 years ago. And they're still going now. They're in the 80s,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Own stuff. I mean, I'm not saying they were always bad. They've done a lot of good stuff, but if you stick around long enough, your bad albums outweigh your good albums. Like Bowie.
Yeah, it's like everybody's. It's probably why probably why Morrissey on his own has never been anywhere near as good as the Smiths. It's just like
I mean, he's not on his own one. I mean, one of my favorite Led Zeppelin. But have you heard Robert Plant's solo stuff? It's not very good.
Well, no. That's often because you look at great bands. I mean, the Jam might be an exception here because that really was about Paul Weller, right? So Paul Weller was the Jam to a large extent.
Also, a very nice man.
Yeah, by all accounts, I never really was anything horrible about him. But that's right, Joe. So, Paul Weller was the creative force behind the Jam.
Yeah.
I mean, rather
Council were quite good as well, weren't they?
Yeah, they were all right. They were okay.
Yeah, they were quite good.
I'd say they were probably nearly as good as the Jam were. I'd say that. But most bands revolve around a pair of people, So whether that is Strummer and Mick Jones or Morrissey and Johnny Marr, and if you separate those people and put one of them on their own, it's never going to be as good as the sum of the two, the sum of the two of them together. And that's the big thing. Yeah. So when people go solo and they've been in bands like that, it's very often the case that it's not going to be as good. Any thoughts on that, Joe? Yeah?
Well, with Morrissey, for example, I know I've got all of his solo albums. You get the occasional flash of the old brilliance, but you're talking about a man. Weirdly enough, Morrissey and I share the same birthday, 22nd of May, and so I can always remember how old he is because he was born in '59. I was born in '67. So he's 64 now. Do you really expect a 64-year-old man who's a multi-millionaire and has been for most of his life now to say anything about our lives, about not really? Whereas when he was a 24-year-old, from wherever he was from, Wally Range or whatever, then suddenly he's saying things that are relevant to you as a young person. I mean, I remember when the Smiths broke up, it was like a bereavement. I couldn't believe it.
Right.
Yeah, it was. There was actually. I seem to remember. This is really mad, but someone actually jumped off a bridge or something. There was a story about. There was a story about people. It wasn't that.
They were on Nirvana level popularity, the Smiths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That passionate, really passionate fan base who really got it. And I think someone once said that they couldn't understand. What was the journalist? I can't remember the journalist's name, but he said, I'm always surprised at other people like the Smiths because it seemed so personal to me that I didn't think other people would get it. And those are the best bands.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Well, that's the thing. It was almost well like they got out at the right time. They kind of got out as well, just as they were threatening to get big. They were kind of threatening to become like mainstream pop stars, and they didn't. I kind of I don't think they meant to split up, but Johnny was actually asked in an interview, how do you think the Smiths would have fared if they carried on for a bit longer? And he said, I'm glad we split up.
I saw a YouTube video about a Smiths song called Panic, and they were basically making the argument that it was about Jimmy Savile.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that argument.
The lead side streets that you slip down, the provincial towns you jog around.
Yeah, it wasn't about Jimmy Savile.
What was it about?
I thought it was about Steve Wright playing "Baby I'm Your Man" after Chernobyl or something.
Well, that was it was about supposedly. The arguments vary, the theories vary, but supposedly it is about just the sort of general awfulness of being in the Thatcherite 80s.
Right.
The legend.
But look at the art that was produced in the Thatcherite 80s compared to the art that's been produced, say, during the Blair years.
You always get that, though. Wherever you get a great deal of poverty and destruction and everything, you always get great art because people, it rises.
That is true. You get, I mean, I can just talk where I'm based. You get a lot of brilliant films and music come out of France, which is quite relatively, for European standards, it's quite an impoverished country. It has a lot of poverty, a lot of suffering. But then you look at a neighbouring country like Sweden or Germany or even Switzerland. There's just nothing in comparison. Just nothing in comparison that comes out of those countries compared to what comes out of France, particularly the banlieues of Paris.
Whenever you get a large group of people who are not spoken for, who do not have a voice, they create their own voice through art, whether it's painting, music, or theatre, or whatever.
Yeah, Morrissey was meant to be Andy as well, wasn't he?
He was what?
Morrissey, he was a bit of a boxer, wasn't he?
No, right. This is what I mentioned to you. Remember, I think I mentioned you this, Joe. That one time we were on G-Man's stream, I think, after a fight, and it was about Morrissey kicking about with Cornelius Carr for a few years in the 90s.
Yeah, he got into boxing. He'd attend the York Hall. He was never a fighter himself. He was a good athlete at school. He was a runner, but not a boxer. I'll tell you,
he wrote a book about a runner, didn't he?
Say again? Didn't
he write a book about a runner?
Oh yes, yeah, a novel. I haven't read it. It's meant to be awful, but I haven't read it.
Right.
He was. I'll tell you who was a very good boxer was Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury. Okay, I can believe that. That. He was a big fella, actually, wasn't he?
Well, he got into it with Sid Vicious of the Pistols, and Vicious came in when the Pistols were recording their Never Mind the Bollocks album.
Oh, he battered him, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, he just threw him out the studio. He didn't smack him around. He just
but he
walk away, picked him up and threw him out.
It
was a complete feeble win.
I'm not a fan of the Sex Pistols, to be honest. Or John Rotten has really not improved with age.
I'm gonna do a trivia question. Reveal the answer at the end of the show. I bet Joe knows the answer to this. We'll do a boxing one, right? Just in honour of our guest here. And the question tonight is, can you name, and I bet you know, Joe, we'll tell everyone at the end of the show, can you name the first British fighter to win a version of the World Super Middleweight Championship? So the first British fighter to win a version of the World Super Middleweight Championship.
I think I can. Do you want me to tell you the answer?
Well, you can tell me at the end of the show, or you can give the answer. Do you know the answer?
I think I do. Yeah, it was a Scottish man.
It was. Yeah. There's a big clue. There you go. Yeah. So yes, Joe will give you the answer at the end of the show. So the Joe, that's one of the many things you do is you run the Joe Stunner Boxing podcast. I've recommended viewing. I've shared links to the podcast of yours and put them up on Facebook, as you'll have seen. And I'd fully recommend it too. There are a few really good boxing podcasts kicking about, and there's plenty of not so good ones as well. But I really got a couple of things. What the challenge of being a podcaster? You've alluded to a couple of things. Do you, once you get to a certain sort of profile, do you get your fair share of like strange people and people making strange comments? Like you've mentioned one to me, so is it a fairly frequent occurrence?
Not really. Most people are great. The one you're thinking of, that was an aberration. I mean, he was a very strange man. Do you want me to explain?
Briefly to the listener, just because it was mad because I had that follow-up quote for you, but it was just a bit bonkers. Where he seemed to me to come on to argue a point with you, and then said it seemed to be turned into a threat of a fight, if I remember it rightly.
Well, there was again. This is very rare. This is the only one I've had in the channel it's just celebrated its 3rd birthday, so I'm delighted to say this was the only really bad person who had to kick off the channel. But he was he had this incredibly pretentious, pompous way of leaving his comments, very sort of gaslighting and just not very pleasant person. And he then left. I made a video. I can't even remember what it was about, but he said, "Are you going to apologise to me now?" I said, "Have you got the right channel?" I didn't understand what he meant. "Oh, I see. So you're pretending you don't know who I am." I said, "Mate, I have not got a bloody clue who you are. What are you talking about?" "Well, you made an entire video about me." I said, "In 3 years, I've never made an entire video about any subscriber. What on earth are you talking about?" And then this went on for a little while. And in the end, I called him a pretentious twat, I think. And then he then said that he wanted to get in touch with me and meet me somewhere. I mean, like I'm going to take time out of my life to meet this fool. So I said, "Well, look, I'll often see him at the York Hall. If you see me, you know what I look like. I've no idea what you look like. Don't even know what your name is. But you can approach me and I'll tell you to your face. And you can do what you want to do. I think I phrased it. I'll give you a full assessment, full mental." And this ended with, but he would sign off by saying, in some sort of faux Shakespearean wording. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, and I left it with I sort of imitated him and just a sort of and then I sat there for 10 minutes with waiting for him to reply, because I thought, this is a bit of fun. But he didn't reply, so I kicked him off the channel. I thought, what am I doing here? I'm behaving like a 14-year-old. So I just threw him off the channel. I kind of regret it, because I should have left his comments up so everyone could see them and see what an absolute fool he was.
You don't need that energy around you.
No, you don't. And the whole purpose of doing the channel is that I meet other boxing fans. I've
exactly, something positive, a community, a shared passion. Yeah. You don't need that. Like Darren knows, I go on about energy a lot, and you don't need that kind of aggression around you. It is draining. Yeah, it is draining. Ironic that you don't need aggression around you in a boxing channel, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's not going to improve your day, your mood, your sleeping pattern, nothing.
Well, yeah. Well, Marco, we've had plenty of guests on, and I know you've liked all but one of them. So I know this was a conversation that. Sorry?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say, when you start mentioning a group of people as less than human, I start to sort of think, I don't really want to be listening to this voluntarily. Right. It's like, no, it's not my thing. It's not my thing. I'm not a boxing fan, but I can listen to anyone talk about boxing if that's their passion and it gets them on a high vibrational level. Yes, I'll enjoy it.
And I think there's something for that. You can kind of feel the energy coming off people. You can tell who's positive and who's negative.
Of course you can.
And it's not really about. Go on.
I hadn't watched snooker for a couple of years, and then I sent you that thing that I was randomly listening to, Tony Drago and Stephen Hendry, and suddenly I was like, "Oh, this is brilliant!" But you could send that to anyone who isn't a snooker fan, and I think they would get something out of it.
Well, Tony Drago seems like a cool guy and always did. Thanks for sending that. Yeah, we were snooker fans.
It was a lovely little snapshot of London and Chinatown at a place in history, in Chinatown in the 80s, and then going to those little Maltese bars and listening to, the Maltese guys playing card games at 4 a.m. It was just an interesting snapshot of a place and time in history.
It was indeed. Yeah, what did you think of? What did you used to watch snooker back in the day, Joe? Because it was a huge sport for a while, wasn't it? It was always on TV.
I used to watch it with my grandparents. I remember staying up till whenever it was, 1 or 2 in the morning, to watch Dennis Taylor beat Steve Davis on the final black. And
that would have been like 4 a.m. or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very, very early. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But no, I was going to bed. I mean, this was one of the most dramatic things I've ever seen.
How could you? You'd just be.
And of course, he was down, wasn't he? At one point, Taylor 8-0 down, and then he come all the way back.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And it's one of those where Davis ends up coming out of that going, how the hell did I not win that? But So
how would you sleep after that? If you were Steve Davis, how could you? You'd just be. That'd be a next level of pissed off, wouldn't it?
Well,
he was virtually unbeatable in the ball. As near as damn it unbeatable in those days, wasn't he? I mean, he was destroyed. And then along comes Dennis Taylor, who's a sort of mild-mannered Irishman, and he's 8-0 down. And the next thing you know, it's 8-8 all or whatever it was. It was incredible.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, he was obviously better. It was a better player than Dennis Taylor. The impression I always got with Steve Davis, and we'll come back to the boxer in a minute. The impression I always got with Steve Davis, he wasn't particularly talented, but he was in an era where actually a lot of snooker players didn't take the sport seriously. They didn't practice. I know it's not a physical sport. There's still an element of living the life, like getting up and going to bed at sensible times or whatever. Yeah. And Davis was the one person who was actually taking the sport seriously and practicing every day and not getting plastered and not going to nightclubs and things like that. And then along comes Stephen Hendry, who does everything good that Davis ever did, but happens to have a bit more natural talent as well and takes it on to the next level.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got. Yeah. So Go on.
I thought Davis was. I wouldn't say he. I still think he's one of the best snooker players ever. I mean, I know we've got Hendry and we've got Sullivan, but
Jimmy White as well.
Jimmy White, yeah. Oh, how many? What was it? 6 or 7 finals, and he didn't win a single one.
Yeah,
it's a shame. But of course, everyone loved Alex Higgins because he was this flamboyant cavalier, incredibly charismatic. You didn't know what you were next.
Yeah, but actually, if you look at Alex Higgins' kind of trophies won, it's not that many, is it? Vis-a-vis his actual reputation in the sport and how loved he is. But you're right. It's because of the way he played the game. He was far more entertaining than someone like Steve Davis.
He ended his life playing people for a fiver in snooker halls in Belfast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back to boxing, mate. If Joe, so I think I'll go in contact with you when we had the Dubois against the AJ fight very recently, and I actually managed to clean up on it because I was one of those lucky people who saw it coming and saw an upset. Yeah, so just really the other thing being Mr. Fury as well. Do you think Tyson Fury and Usyk 2 will actually happen? Because I'm gonna put my cards on the table and bet against.
I don't make it better than 50-50 that it'll happen. I think probably. Well, one scenario is that Fury will cry off sick and look to fight AJ. If AJ doesn't rematch Dubois, and I don't think he will, they might try and make a sort of past its sell by date Fury versus AJ, which would be a big money spinner. But Eddie Hearn was interviewed today, and he was saying they asked him about Joshua fighting Dubois again, and he said, well, that's certainly one option. Well, no, that should be the only option. But the fact that you're saying that means you're thinking about other things.
Yeah.
And if Tyson Fury fought Usyk again, he'd lose again, and I think he kind of knows that.
I think the best shot Fury had against Usyk was the first time he fought him when he had the element of surprise on his side, and actually it's a funny thing because I think that Fury probably got into the best shape he's capable of getting into in the first fight.
Maybe there is. People say that because he lost a lot of weight and he looked aesthetically looked better, but I think you can. I always remember. Angelo Dundee, when Muhammad Ali, who was completely shot, fought Larry Holmes and lost a lot of weight and looked great. He dyed his hair and everything, and he looked like the old Ali. And Angelo Dundee said, "Light ain't right," meaning that as your body changes as you get to your late 30s, you need to carry a bit of extra weight. It's a different gig when you're that age to when you were 23, 24, 25.
For sure, but I think the days of Tyson Fury coming in at 245 pounds are well gone. They're over, aren't they? They're long past. And he's not doing that. He's still coming in at 19 stone something, isn't he? Or around that kind of ballpark.
You can't go up and down in weight and it not have a detrimental effect on your body. It's like Ricky Hatton. He used to bloat up to 15 stone and then he'd come down to 10 stone again. It's ridiculous, really.
Yeah, well, I remember watching one of the. Remember on ITV when they used to have the Fab Four? The Fabulous Four, who were, of course, Audley Harrison, Danny Williams, Michael Sprott, and Matt Skelton.
Yeah.
And they used to have fights between those four on ITV all the time, Yeah. And it was wonderful because one day one of them was going to get a world title shot. It was Skelton who got the world title shot, wasn't it, against Chagayev?
And Danny Williams fought Klitschko as well.
Yeah. So and. He got that. Did he get that for beating Mike Tyson? Was that his? Yeah, it was.
Was it?
Well,
2005-ish.
Yeah, and Vitaly Klitschko.
I seem to remember there being criticisms of Danny Williams' weight, like as far back as that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he could pile it on. Yeah, he could pile it on and then be a couple of stone lighter in the next fight. But I remember that. But. Yeah, during one of those fights, I remember between fights, I think they used to have those fights, and Amir Khan coming up when he was starting out would be on the undercard.
Was that just after the Olympics?
Yeah, so it was 2004 Olympics for Khan, wasn't it?
He got to the final, lost to a Cuban guy.
Mario Kindlan, yeah.
Right, yeah.
And they cut to the crowd, and they interviewed Ricky Hatton, but it was like between fights, Ricky Hatton. Yeah. and he looked like a 1980s darts player. That's all I can say. He had a double chin and everything. He looked like either a 1980s darts player or a 1970s comedian. You know, it's like.
But he could put the beers away.
Yeah.
Ricky, yeah, he could. I mean,
Guinness drinker, wasn't he?
Yeah, the other thing was there was a story about what he, I mean, I hope him and Tyson Fury don't go drinking together. That'd be carnage.
Yeah, but no, I don't know if he had a drinking problem, but I know he could put the beers away, and if you're trying to keep the weight off, Guinness is one of the worst things you can drink.
Well, the mad thing was he was able to stop for the training camp, wasn't he, and get his weight back down again. And I presume so. He wasn't an alcoholic, and
No. It's not either with alcohol. With alcohol, it's not either you're an Oliver Reed style alcoholic or you're completely clean. There's a lot of room in between where it can be negative.
Yeah. I mean, there was no question that when Ricky did drink, he drank far too much, and he binge drinking is not the word for it. These were benders that would often go on
if you're putting that much weight on it, is incredibly bad for your health.
For sure. And it means that you spend.
A very bad thing.
It means that you spend your entire training camp losing weight, rather than doing anything productive or useful. Your entire training camp becomes about getting down to 10 stone. It's just So I just remember that when they cut to Ricky Hatton in the crowd for one of these fights, I was like, oh my god, someone ate Ricky Hatton. Someone ate him. So it was, that's the other thing with Tyson Fury, who's been, he's done that. He's gone through that 2-year bender that I always thought he would end up paying a big price for at some point. I always expected, like a Dillian White or someone like that, or a Valin to knock him out surprisingly. Like he'd come in one night and he'd be like completely overrated, he'd just be completely shot, and it does happen to people there.
Well, his punch resistance against Usyk in that 9th round, he was all but knocked out. And that's normally, previously he'd been on the floor quite a bit. The thing about Tyson Fury is you put him on the floor, that's not too difficult if you're a big puncher. But he would get up and his recuperative powers were brilliant. And the fact that he went the distance with Usyk is actually to his credit, because he was in a bad shape in the 9th round. But you consider the size difference. Look at the size of Tyson Fury compared to Usyk. And Usyk was the one chasing him. Fury, this enormous giant, was like, what's the old story? The David and the Goliath. The Goliath was running away from David, not the other way around.
Yeah, for sure. But you're right. It was what has Fury come out recently and like trying to tease Usyk and said something like, "You couldn't finish me off" or something like that. I read something.
He talks like a crap, doesn't he?
Well, it does. I think it runs in the family. We're going to have a chat about John as well. I know you're not a massive. I think one thing we've got in common is we've probably got a very similar baseline feeling about John Fury. I
just think John Fury missed his calling. He should have been a manager in WWF in like the late 90s. I think he would have been sensational.
Right.
His promo skills are unsurpassed. The guy can cut a promo.
Well, I can't help but think with John Fury that somewhere there is a village missing its idiot. What do you think? It's.
I mean, I'm not disputing that he's an idiot. I'm just disputing the guy's got something. You give him a microphone and he can talk.
He does have a level of charisma, he is. Sure. If I do a video about John Fury, it'll get 1,000 hits straight away. Because people like it. Like I did one just really off the cuff, like a 10-minute video. Where's John Fury? Where's he gone? He used to be so mouthy and so prevalent, and now he's disappeared. And so people were, that was getting lots of views, 2,000 views or something, which for my channel is quite a lot. So I think it's people like characters. It's like Chris Eubanks, another one.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't ever think. Chris Eubanks, he does. I think it's just a subtle difference. I mean, the common thread between Chris Eubanks Senior and John Fury is like the absolute raging narcissism running through both of them, and the thing about living vicariously through their sons. Which
have you ever seen I don't know, it's the promo or the interview with Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn, and Nigel Benn won't look at him?
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Was it the first fight?
Chris won't look at Nigel, isn't it? And then Nigel says,
that's it. I don't know if it's a work or they've just said to each other, all right, let's do this before. Right, yeah, that sounds good. But either way, it's just like you would be buying that pay-per-view.
Is that the first fight or the second?
Oh, this would be 1990.
First, I think. But is that the one where Chris then turns, when Nigel's interrupted and Chris says, can we have some
parliament?
Yes.
That's the one.
I think it's a work, but I'm sure it's a work. But either way, it's masterful. It's masterful.
Because the second fight, remember, John, the second fight, Jonathan Wass hosted the press that one. Like, it was like a showdown, and I think they broadcast it immediately before the fight. That was the fight at Old Trafford.
Yes,
right.
And the real star of that show was actually James Toney, who appears for about 2 minutes.
Right. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And James Toney just, all right, you were here for 2 minutes. Funny enough, we think you're the best of the three, James. We do. Until Lloyd Jones Jr. came along, he was, but James Toney used to talk smack about Chris Eubank's mum as well, didn't he? And really upset him.
Mm-hmm. That's not on.
Yeah, that's going too far. But
I know.
I actually went to the press conference for the rematch that was in the Strand in London, and Chris turned up wearing he turned up on his Harley Davidson, parked it right where the cameras could get the best shot of it. He had, if memory serves, he didn't have a shirt on, but he had a vest with a tie, and he was posing and preening. He had his jodhpurs on, and he was posing and preening. But I must say, he was really very nice, because they were like, I always remember he was handing out autographed photos. This of course, was days before selfies and all that stuff. And he was deliberately looking for the children, saying, look, there's a little girl over there, give her this photo. And he was really, really very sort of emotional. And then Nigel turned up in his Porsche, and it was striking because they did, the paparazzi were there and everything, and they got back to back. And it was the one thing that I remember is that it was so striking how much bigger Eubank was than Ben, much man, which is kind of like when you see their sons now, Con and Ben. I mean, they had a little contretemps today where they were banging heads, and Con and Ben is tiny compared to Chris Eubank Jr. But the names
all of that you're saying with the Porsche and the Harley and the clothes they're wearing, people must have just been handed out, like to get that pay-per-view, they would have just been taking money hand over fist, and everybody would have
it wasn't on pay-per-view. It wasn't on pay-per-view. It was on terrestrial telly, wasn't it, Joe?
ITV, yeah.
Well, ITV, they're getting. Would they not get more money depending on how many viewers?
I would imagine. Well, they had a set amount. I mean, for the rematch, Ben got about $1 million, and Eubank got 850 grand because he talked about it. And they said, "Well, you beat him previously. Why aren't you getting the most amount?" But he said, "Well, I don't care what he's getting. I'm getting 850 grand, and I'm not a greedy man, so I'll fight him again. I'll beat him once. I'll beat him again."
But it was a draw that time.
Would say the main event gets an incredibly high amount of views. Does that money, is it like a tide that lifts all boats? Do the guys lower down the card benefit from that as well?
In those days?
Yeah.
No, I think you get a set amount, and any bonuses are at the discretion of the promoter. So
that's a pity.
Yeah, because nowadays it's changed now. I mean, we're talking 34 years ago, something like that, 30 years ago, 35 years ago. It's a different gig now, because fighters, if you're talking about that level, which are the elite or the ones that really sell what are now pay-per-view.
But they're on TV, yeah.
You'll get a cut of the pay-per-view money. But when it was just terrestrial telly, you would get a set agreed amount, negotiated amount, and anything else. There might be a stipulation in there that you might get a bonus for whatever reason, but they were exceptions rather than the rule.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, so yeah. So you don't, yeah. But they were great. They were actually really good days watching boxing on terrestrial television, and I'm like, yeah, I'm more of a capitalist than you, but part of me misses that. You know that thing, that free to air thing. You know, there's a big part of me that goes, that free to air thing, because I think pay per view has done a lot of damage to boxing, particularly the price of pay per views and what you call squeezing the reg.
With pay per views, did the guys on the card not get more money?
Go on, Joe. Yeah, just.
Yeah, but again, it will be negotiated. If you're talking about undercard fighters,
yeah,
they'll get good money, better money than they would get. I mean, I'm generalising.
There's a guy on YouTube I quite like. He does sort of podcasts on wrestlers and things. But I don't know if he's I don't want to say journeyman because I don't know if it's an insulting term. But he was an enhancement boxer, and he had a match against Anthony Joshua at Wembley. It's called Matt Legg.
Matt Legg.
Yeah, I don't want to insult him by saying journeyman because I don't know if it's a word like jobber. It's a bit, you know.
It's not an insult.
But would he have been paid well for that match against Anthony Joshua? I mean, he was no spring chicken when he fought Anthony Joshua. But he's a blooming nice guy. I'm doing this off memory. Was that a Wembley Arena fight? Yeah, it was. I think he might have been opening bout. I don't know.
Yeah, and he got done in a round, if memory serves. But he would have had a negotiation.
He did, but fair play to him for showing up. He was a lot young.
Matt Legg was a good pro, you know, and he was a good sort of English level fighter. And Joshua at the time was just beginning his career and was fighting these domestic guys.
It would have been like the Olympics.
Yeah. But he would have had a negotiated contract. He was paid a certain amount. I mean, I'll give you a recent example. Let me think of one. A guy I know him quite well, Cello Renda, who was a super middleweight. I watched him at the York Hall win the Southern Area title. So he's quite a lowish level. I mean, winning a title is good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not slagging it off. He won that fight, and then he had one more fight where he lost. He got stopped, and then he retired. Well, he's from Peterborough, and Eddie Hearn did one of those next generation cards from Peterborough, and offered Cello 10 grand to come out of retirement because he knew that Cello would bring some tickets, bring in some tickets, and Cello turned him down. But that's a good example. I mean, a guy who has a certain commercial worth who will bring in the punters, because Cello Renda's fighting. Let's all go to the showground and watch this. They offered him a flat fee of 10 grand, and that was a next gen show. So it gives you some idea of how the lower level guys are paid. If you're a journeyman, it depends on a 4-rounder or 6-rounder. You might get $1,000, you might get 15, you might get $2,000, but of course you've got to take your trainer's fee out of that and taxes.
Yeah. You know what? The thing,
a lot of open hands waiting for the pay.
Yeah. Tell you what I'm going to mention this because it's brilliant trivia. Do you know what I remember Cello Renda for?
Double knockdown.
Yes, against Paul Samuels. Yeah. I think it's coming out of the clinch, isn't it? And they both throw the same shot and they deck each other simultaneously. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the last round of Rocky 2, but for real.
He fought Paul Samuels twice. I think the first one was a disqualification. The second one he got stopped, Cello.
Right.
He was a very hard punching, incredibly game middleweight, then a super middleweight. Fantastic to watch. And unfortunately, he wasn't given any easy ride. If you look at the quality of the opposition, he fought virtually everyone, including Martin Murray, who had several world title fights.
Yeah, that's
Smith, who was a 2-time British champ. But he got to the final of 2. You remember those what are they called? Those little knockout tournaments that Sky.
Prize fighter.
He got to the final of 2 of those, and that meant that I think one was a 12 grand purse and the other one was a 16 grand purse. But he fought Martin Murray in an incredible final, still on YouTube. So
Martin Murray's a bloody good fighter to get in the final of one of those, isn't he?
Yeah, Martin Murray was one of the best fighters not to win a world title from Britain. I think he had about 5 attempts. He couldn't quite get over the finishing line. He fought Golovkin.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Well, that was always going to be a tall order, wasn't it? And if he fought did he fight Felix Stern as well?
Yes, was that? Yes, I think you're right. Was it Sturm, Golovkin? He fought Billy Joe Saunders right at the end of his career. Good fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Had a good career. I'll tell you what, who was the first person to win 2 prize fighters?
Audley Harrison.
Yes.
Yeah.
We came up in Convo last week. So, I was just saying though, the Gary who was on last week that. That's a guy who gets a lot of stick. People would be, somebody who watches like the lower levels of boxing. People don't realise Audley Harrison's career was actually a lot better than people in the press would. If you read the mainstream press about him, you'd think he was the most hopeless boxer ever or something.
Well, he took himself up. He was a European champ. He won the EBU title, knocked out Scott, and he actually avenged a couple of his defeats as well. He avenged 3 of his defeats.
3, against Danny Williams and Martin Rogan as well. Yeah,
Rogan, and
Sprott you mentioned,
and Danny Williams. But people, because he was so mouthy, he sort of painted himself into a corner, and then embarrassment against Hay, where he just didn't show up and got barely through a punch, and that's what people remember him for. But he was, and also he did a lot for the amateur game by winning that gold medal. He actually opened funding for British fighters, which we had, the women's game took off, and we had, Nicola Adams winning 2 golds and all sorts of gold medalists, James DeGale and so on. A lot of that the funding was down to Audley Harrison.
Because British boxing had been in the doldrums for a long time at the amateur level, hadn't it? It had been a kind of forgotten thing. Sorry, Largo, you're going to come in there.
I'll say there was quite a famous women's boxer from a town near Blackpool called Fleetwood, Jane Couch. Yeah. I think she actually fought Muhammad Ali's daughter.
She may well have done. I know she fought Lucia Wright.
Or his daughter-in-law, or something like that.
Layla Ali. Like Layla Ali.
I don't know. I'd have to go on YouTube and find it. I just remember at the time seeing on Granada Tonight. A segment on it years ago. Like I say, I've never followed boxing as closely as I follow things like football, wrestling, snooker, that kind of thing. But I do remember it. I do. I mean, she'll be long retired now. I'd be astonished if she wasn't.
She is definitely an unsung heroine of British boxing. I mean, tremendously so, because
I remember she made me laugh because she said her first professional fight or something was against a serving police officer. And she's delighted in knocking out the police officer. So she had a sense of humour about it. She
did. She was the first female professional under the British Boxing Board of Control. She actually had to take them to court and win her discrimination case, which opened the doors for women boxers to pick up or to be eligible for licenses. And the sort of renaissance that's going on in women's boxing at the moment has been for the last 10 years. Again, a lot of that is down to Jane Couch, domestic.
Yeah. I think she probably got a bit of a rough time because she's from a council estate in Fleetwood. I mean, that's a rough place to come from.
Yeah, she's a tough girl.
Yeah. Like a fishing town in the 80s. Fleetwood, the decline of the fishing industry. That's no picnic.
Yeah.
Joe, we were talking about the I think you've talked about it lots on your channel, and there's a lot to be said about the pay-per-view thing, about the price of pay-per-view and how that is turning boxing into an overly niche sport, and also it represents a kind of squeezing of the rag in terms of the. What do you think the dangers are? What do you think any potential remedies are for this? Do you think it's capping the price of pay-per-views, or?
Well, if you create a business model, you have to convince the public that it is unavoidable. And the thing about pay-per-view is that it is avoidable. It just means that someone like an Anthony Joshua or a Tyson Fury won't get paid 40 million. They'll have to make do with a mere 10 million or 12 million or even 15 million.
Right.
So they've created this sort of model where people just assume that it has to exist. It doesn't have to exist. As with anything that is just unregulated capitalism, it will cannibalize itself. It will eat itself up. So in the end, you will get and Turkey Al Sheikh, the Saudi guy who is currently this great Riyadh season thing going on. He said we need to put a cap of £20 on pay-per-views, because otherwise we'll just price so many people out that you will get a scenario where, like football used to be working class. I stopped watching football 10 years ago because I just got so pissed off with the whole rather repulsive sort of subculture that goes with it. But, I don't want that to happen to boxing. So I think Turkey Al Sheikh, weirdly enough, a man who's a multi-billionaire in charge of many more billions, he is actually on the right path. That's a step forward to, putting a cap on it for 20 quid, provided the quality of the fights remains high, because we've had cards which have been pay-per-view, which in no shape or form 12 years ago would have been pay-per-view. If the pay-per-view used to be a major event, like Leonard fighting Hagler or Leonard fighting Pearce, something like that would be a major.
Go on,
I was going to say, I remember like 2002ish, there was a Roy Jones Jr. fight. I think it was his first fight where he was moving up a weight, and there was literally, this is before I had the internet anyway, there was literally a whole channel on Sky just dedicated to promoting that one fight. I think it was Roy Jones Jr. against.
Is that when he went to heavyweight?
Yeah, it was his
first.
It was his first fight moving up a weight.
It might have been James Toney, early 90s.
No,
I think this was. Are you talking about Roy Jones when he doubled at heavyweight for one fight?
Yeah, he actually won, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember there was a whole channel on Sky just dedicated to promoting that one fight, and being a wrestling fan, I just tuned in to watch it because it was spellbinding. It was great promotion.
Yeah. Nowadays you have had, cards that, like I say, are just not pay-per-view cards, and yet there they are. You're having to pay 15, 20, 25 quid for them. I mean, the worst of the lot. And I don't buy pay-per-views, but I mean, I stream it all. I'm definitely, an other means person. But the worst of the lot was Tyson Fury against Dillian White. The undercard. Absolutely. So it was not worthy of the York Hall on a Friday night.
No, and this is the other thing is is when they do this, when they put the, and the main event wasn't worthy of a pay-per-view in the first place, because it was a kind of routine defense that. You expected it to win, and was Chisora 3 a pay-per-view or not? Or did they put that on Mickey the Sky? That was a pay-per-view. That is embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Derek Chisora.
I mean, I remember the thing about pay-per-view was it got put to bed because of the Klitschko era and David Hay and Audley. It was a washout, and. Hay versus Vladimir Klitschko was a terrible fight. So Sky backed out. They said no more pay-per-views. They were thinking of like putting out a boxing, except maybe the odd small hall show.
Really?
Yeah. And then Hearn came along and sort of got this big contract, largely thanks to Adam Smith. Worked very close with him. There's a guy called Barney Francis, who was head of Sky Sports, and gradually. Hearn rebuilt the whole pay-per-view model. Now, the first one he did was the rematch between Tony Bellew and Nathan Cleverly, which was an awful fight, but the undercard was absolutely stacked. There was about 7 or 8 great fights on there, and it was only for like 15 quid maybe. So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, he put that out there as, okay, this is what you get. You spend 15 quid, which is the price of a few beers. Look at all this great boxing that's on.
Yeah.
That's when people started to say, okay, we'll go with that. Well, of course, what happens is greed takes over, the price goes up, the quality comes down, and the whole, capitalist vibe eats itself up. And eventually people say, hang on a minute, what's going on here? This is not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the worst form, the vulture capitalism, which I think is, it's not enlightened. Which I always think, if you're running a business, actually, you should be giving your customers a good product at a decent price because you want them to come back.
Yes.
That's just enlightened capitalism as I see it.
And everybody in the country getting a good wage.
Yeah. So So this thing with the pay-per-views, you're right. I mean, you're also paying for a whole show. The other thing that always struck me, Joe, about this was, do you have to have Sky in the first place to get the pay-per-view?
I don't think I haven't bought a pay-per-view since 1996, but
Right.
I don't think you have to. I know you don't. I am a DAZN subscriber, which I may kick that into touch because the quality's gone down. But you don't have to be a DAZN subscriber to buy a pay-per-view. I think the price might be different. With Sky, I honestly can't comment. I don't.
Yeah, so because that was back. I remember back in the day, and I've not bought a pay-per-view for years either. Back in the day, you had to have Sky in the first place to buy the pay-per-view, so you're paying twice. Yeah, and I always thought that was absolutely bang out of order. I always thought, look, you should be able to get. If Sky would have put a pay-per-view on, then that's fine. But someone like me who hasn't got Sky anymore should be able to go on there and pay the £20 once, because right, and that's on regular telly, and take that as a one-off, because that's the other thing. It's that thing where you're making people pay twice. It's terrible.
Yeah, I remember going way back to when Sky started, and I got it, and all the boxing was free. There were no pay-per-views, and also before that, even so, we're going back to say the mid to late 80s. There were a lot of Mike Tyson fights when he was coming up. That sort of 87 to 89 period. They were on ITV at 4 a.m, free.
Yeah.
So watch it. I mean, I didn't mind staying up, and I would record them all on VHS as it was then, and But I think, but more is never enough with these promoters, with these broadcasts. They want more until they end up exploding. It's like at the moment with the Riyadh season. You any kind of business, you need checks and balances. You need someone to come in and say, well, actually, I'll get a better deal than that. Once you have concentrated power, that's no good, because then they can call the shot totally. It's either my way or the highway, and that is why certain countries, not Britain, unfortunately, have monopolies commissions. Like America, you can't have a monopoly in America. They're very strict about that. Over here, we're not.
I thought we used to have one. I mean, it might not exist anymore. It might be toothless now. But I remember years ago, when Rupert Murdoch tried to buy Man United.
That's not. I don't think that's a monopolies commission. Because I mean, back in the 80s, I worked for De Beers Diamonds, and they didn't, which is virtually a monopoly for diamonds, and they couldn't have an office in America because it was a monopoly. So they used to do it in central London, which is where I work.
Right.
No. Yeah. So take that. We've been going 50 minutes. So I'll just have a quick one if we can about you've done a lot of work in the field of addiction and the psychology. I'm interested in psychology as a subject. Obviously, we had a quick chat before the show. My take on addiction's always been basically that once you're an addict, you're an addict for life. You can't cure anybody of being an addict. It's just a case of maybe channeling the addicted personality into something less destructive. I'm just wondering if that's your experience and what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, 100%. And again, there are exceptions to any generalisation, but for the most part, addiction is a state of mind. It's not a substance. You can be addicted to eating biscuits. You can be addicted to gambling, shopping, sex. You name it, heroin. It doesn't really matter. And that is why when I spent a number of years working for a drug and alcohol agency, helping people, with they'd be on scripts, methadone scripts, or Subutex scripts, or we'd run groups and so on and so on. And that was, to be honest with you, most of the people that I work with who were former addicts, because I have a lot of people who are former service users who come into the field to help others, they were the fittest people in the room. Because they were running everywhere and jogging everywhere and cycling everywhere, and because they had replaced the negative, the heroin, the crack, and it was alcohol, with fitness and being.
You can get a runner's high though.
Yeah, well, anything that gets the endorphins going is a high.
Yeah, the endorphin. You can get the dopamine if you're having a nice run and like the weather's nice outside. You can get that dopamine in the brain, can't you? It's the same thing that you get out of an addictive substance, I guess. We're talking as well about the friend there, the one who had the friend who had the parent who was an alcoholic and ended up with he ended up kicking the drink, but he just transferred across to Jesus instead to the religion. So that's another one. And actually, a lot of those, those 13-step recovery programs. Religion is the 13th step, isn't it?
AA was based on has religious roots, doesn't it? AA does. They talk about the higher power. It doesn't have to be a specific religion.
I find that a little bit predatory.
It can be. It certainly can be. Yeah.
I think a lot of religion is quite predatory.
It can be, but 12-step program. That's not the only way of getting clean. There's other things.
No.
Is there a secular way of doing it?
Yes, smart recovery, which is basically it's cognitive behavioural therapy, effectively. You see, group work works. A lot of people, the majority of people I dealt with, they say, I can't
community solves a lot of things.
Absolutely. So if you spend 20 grand going to a rehab and it's all group work, there's a reason for that. Group work works. Well, what we were offering where I worked was free of charge. It was the same thing, but you've got to do it. You've got to really be motivated, and being motivated to climb that mountain, looking up at it, and you can't even see the top of it. You're going to be thinking, Christ, that's terrifying. So people need support to get up that mountain and guidance. So you don't try and sprint up it. You climb it a little bit at a time. You have a sit down if you need it. Then you might slip down a little bit. Then you get a little blip in the road. So you go up again, and gradually you get to the top. Once you're at the top, it's about maintaining it with positive stuff. Because positivity is addictive as well. Good stuff is addictive.
Yeah. The thing I find about this, it's interesting. It's actually in the film Trainspotting at the start, where Renton's saying, when you're a junkie, the only thing you worry about is scoring. And then he goes to the list of the other stuff. And when you're not, you have the job, you have the wife, you have the
girlfriend,
kids, football team that never wins, and he makes the point, it's actually a simpler life in a lot, but it has nothing else in it. And that's the thing. And I suppose that part of that maintaining it is having other things in your life. And when people get into anything too much, it takes them away from the other things. They haven't got anything else. So I'm making sense.
It does make perfect sense, because you're giving up something and it leaves a huge hole in your life, and it can feel like a bereavement. So if you imagine a garden and it's full of shite, it's full of weeds and dog shit, excuse my language, and people have chucked a rusty bike over the fence or whatever, and then you clean it up and you get rid of the weeds, and you've got to maintain that. You've got to put nice flowers in it, and maybe a nice bird bath or something. You know what I mean? You've got to make the garden look beautiful, and then maintain. You don't just sort of walk away. Because you walk away, come back a year later, and it's back to square one.
Yeah. Another guy's trying a bike in there. Absolutely. Yes. It's a fascinating subject. I'll tell you what I found. I was disappointed this week because I don't know if you watch any psychology stuff on the net, Joe, or not. Have you followed anything around that? But,
sorry, I missed that. So.
Did you watch any of the psychology content on the internet at all? Do you watch any of that?
I've read books. I listen to some of it because I'm quite interested in true crime, and the psychology slips over into that. I have to point out, I don't have a degree in psychology or anything. I'm just an interest through my work.
None of us.
Nor do I. But I found myself studying it quite a lot just to try and make sense of certain relationships that were going on in my life and things like that, and people I came into contact with, because you couldn't make sense of them through normal means, if you will. I was disappointed this week when one of the content providers I've been watching for a few years, I discovered that he was now in contact with a certain Mr. Tommy Robinson, so I won't be watching him anymore.
Oh gosh.
This guy on this other channel said, I was out with Tommy Robinson and this other guy who I won't name. I was like, oh right, oh god, right.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, grifter alert. Yeah. So and I was like, I think he called him a narcissist specialist, right? This guy. And I thought, I was out with Tommy Robinson and this other guy, the narcissist specialist. And I thought, what I really want is I want Chris Eubank to say narcissist specialist. Did
you ever see Chris Eubank on
Top of the Pops?
Oh, there was that. Yes, I forgot about that.
Top of the Pops.
Do you know this, right? Do you know what they made Chris Eubank say on Top of the Pops? I shit you not, logo. Because Joel's laughing his head off. He knows what it is.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think I know.
It was in the mid-90s. It was in the mid-1990s. So you know Suggs from Madness when he had a solo career.
Yeah.
Right, and they had Chris Eubank presenting Top of the Pops, and he had to say, and at 6 it's Suggs with Cecilia.
Oh god.
That's a stitch I remember there was one.
My God.
So you want to?
If you want to laugh, go over to YouTube and look at I think it's called 8 out of 10 cats.
Yeah.
Down.
Is that, yeah.
Greg, what's the guy's name? The comic actor, Greg. I can't remember his name. He looks like a very big brick male. Anyway, whatever his name is, he impersonates Chris Eubank. And then in an episode, they have Chris Eubank come on and face him, and then he's impersonating Chris. It's very funny, very funny.
Yeah, he comes up, but I don't think his impersonation was very good either. That was a particular, because everyone thinks they can do a Chris Eubank, but very few people actually can.
I have an unboxing question, though, if I may.
Yeah.
We've got a few minutes left, go.
I was going to say, I've watched a few boxing films, and quite a few, and I've only liked one of them. I haven't liked a single Rocky film. The only boxing film I have seen that I liked was called Cinderella Man. What are the opinions of you gentlemen on boxing films?
You didn't like Raging Bull?
No, not particularly. No.
Okay, that'll get my vote. But Cinderella Man's fine. Rocky's fine if it's the first couple are fine. I think. What do you think, John?
Raging Bull is my favourite boxing film. The thing about boxing is it's almost impossible to replicate it on film to make it look realistic. So what I liked about Raging Bull is that it didn't try to do that. It gave it a sort of surreal, that black and white quality, lots of fast edits and cuts and so on. I think that was
It's very good how they actually got him to put weight on the film. Yeah,
well,
it was real dedication to the role.
I'll go as far as to say that was the best screen performance I've ever seen. I mean, I think De Niro was genius. And I watched a lot of.
Cinderella Man, I just particularly enjoyed it. I just got sort of taken on a journey, and then at the end where he repays his welfare check, I just thought it was a lovely film.
That was about
James Braddock.
I know it's a true story.
James A. Braddock, yeah, and it was. Did it star our friend from Gladiator? What's his name? Russell Crowe. Yeah. I can't remember much about it. I know it was all right. Yeah.
I tell you, see, we mentioned, and I'm pretty sure we can go in an hour, Joe. So I'm going to head off. Jackpot. Lovely. So the other thing that I was maybe worth asking, second Largo mentioned boxing movies, is a controversial boxing movie is Hurricane, the film about Rubin Carter, right? Because I think there's obviously Rubin Carter was incarcerated for a murder in the 1960s. He was released on appeal at probably the second or third attempt in the 80s. There's still he was.
What's that film?
Hurricane. I've got it on DVD. I'll lend it you next time you're up.
Definitely. That sounds right.
Well, there's a question mark about the makers of that movie playing fast and loose with the truth as well, because there was a thing about the middleweight title fight that he had, and essentially what you said about recreating the action on screen, because the boxing looks like it's from a Three Stooges movie, and he's absolutely, what's his name? Joey Giardello was a middleweight champion when he fought. And the film has him absolutely pulverizing Giardello and losing losing one of those dodgy split decisions that you get in Germany sometimes. And the reality was that Giardello, it was close, but Giardello was a clear enough winner.
Giardello won that fight relatively comfortably. He was made to work. And he actually sued the filmmakers afterwards because, for defamation or whatever you want to call it. They made it out that he got battered and that Hurricane Carter was robbed. He wasn't robbed at all. Hurricane Carter was a pretty decent good middleweight. But I have to say, I think he was guilty of murder. And I was on Pat Brown's channel. Pat Brown is a criminal profiler.
I've heard of Pat Brown. Yeah,
she's been on American TV, and I was on her podcast. It lasted about 2 or 3 hours. I thought it would never end. But anyway, the point was we were talking about things like criminal activities of boxers and the mafia and so on, and the history of it. And we touched on the whole Hurricane Carter thing. And she, as a criminal profiler, says that in her opinion, the evidence points towards Carter being guilty and his accomplice. And I agree with that. I don't know for certain whether he was guilty, but the evidence strongly suggests that he did what he went to prison for.
Yeah, well, have you seen a website called Graphic Witness as well by a gentleman called Cal Deal?
No,
that might be worth a read, but it says the same thing. And there was a lot of because of course there was the Bob Dylan song about it, wasn't there? Yeah. And there was a lot of campaigns, but one of the things that isn't reported very much is that while he was actually on his, I think he got the second trial, didn't he, in the mid-70s? He was out briefly for his first retrial, I think in like 1974 or 5. And this was when it was at its height, and Bob Dylan had the song out. And apparently he's meant to have bashed a woman about while he was out for that brief period as well. There was a lady called Carol Kelly who was helping him, and apparently Carter knocked her about in a hotel room. And she said afterwards, I saw a whole side. There was this campaign about him that he was innocent. He was a sweetheart, really, and I saw this whole other side to him. I've always thought, Joe, that at the very least, Carter had knowledge of the crime. That he was involved on some level. Whether he pulled the trigger or not is another matter.
Well, he had violence. I mean, he wasn't sort of someone who came out of the blue and was suddenly accused of murder. He had formed for being a very violent criminal, and his accomplice was just some young kid who idolised him for whatever reason. But I mean, I think he's a psychopath person. He displays all the traits of being a psychopath, as Pat Brown would say, to avoid being sued. But
sorry, go on, did you have to that?
I was just going to say,
sorry, go ahead,
that doesn't equal guilt.
No, it doesn't. No, but it's interesting because the other thing about the misrepresentations of that case. Sorry, John, I'll get back in a second. But the other thing about that case is they said that he was declared innocent by a court of appeal. No, he wasn't. Actually, he was released on a procedural error. Yeah, so there was a feeling that yes, that because there was a whole kind of charged atmosphere of racial prejudice in the 1960s in America, I think the judge, a guy called Lee Sarakin, in the appeal, said, "Yeah, I accept that Carter might not have got a fair trial." And the original decision was for a third trial. Yeah. Not a declaration of innocence, and I think that gets twisted and misrepresented because originally that's what Sarakin ordered was a retrial, and then they decided, well, look, he's done 20 years inside anyway. Some of the witnesses are dead. We'll just have to leave it.
He may be innocent. I mean, I don't say he's guilty. I say that in my opinion, the evidence, if you look at it, suggests he's guilty. But I could be wrong.
Go on.
I was going to say I watched this documentary during COVID called "Making a Murderer" on Stephen Avery, America, and I have no doubt. I mean, one of the things Stephen Avery did was he chucked a cat on a bonfire and things like that. I mean, he just wasn't a good person at all. He was horrible, but that doesn't mean he did it. And by the way, I'm not a Stephen Avery fan or anything like that. I just don't think he did it. But on the other hand, I don't really want anything to do with someone like that.
No,
but that doesn't mean they're guilty.
Well, you know the BTK killer. Do you know this guy?
Dennis Rader.
Dennis Rader. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I was talking to Pat Brown about him, and she said that he's a killer. He's a serial killer. He's a psychopath, but he's actually claimed a lot of. Because he stopped for a number of years, and then there was another spate of murders, and he claimed that when he was caught, he claimed that he had committed those murders, but he actually probably didn't. He was a killer, so it doesn't necessarily follow. It's like something if you go back as far as Jack the Ripper, there's the canonical 5 victims, but you don't actually know whether the Ripper actually killed all 5 of those. He may have killed others. You just don't know.
Yeah. Well, the Avery thing, I haven't seen all of it, but it seems like a piece of work. But it's
the thing about that though is there's one of his nephews who had learning difficulties that got dragged down with him. That's the bit that really got me upset.
Right.
There was is this? No, actually, sorry, I'm thinking of something different.
that he had a particularly slow. I don't know what the politically correct term is these days. He had a nephew who just wasn't playing with a full deck of cards, and the police just wrapped him up like a Christmas present and presented him to a jury. It was horrific. They basically told him what to write in his confession.
There was the same incident with 10 Wellington Place. John Christie, the Welshman Evans.
Timothy Evans, yeah.
Timothy Evans. He had learning difficulties, and he was stitched up like a kipper, and they hung him.
Yeah. It's God. Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, you were sorry, Joe. Were you saying you were on Pat Brown's show as well?
I was, yeah. I've been there a few times, and we did a Jack the Ripper one because that's the subject that interests me, and we did boxing, all sort of boxing related stuff about like Don King had killed. Don King killed 2 men and was in prison. And
it was a villain. Yeah.
I have a question. Was Chris Eubank in prison?
No.
Okay.
He did kill a man. You're talking about Senior, aren't you?
Yes.
He killed a man accidentally, a road worker.
Did he?
Yes, Chris was driving his Jeep or whatever the hell it was and hit the guy and killed him.
Yeah.
He didn't go to prison. I don't know what happened to him. He didn't go to prison.
That's why I don't drive, because I just think it's too big of a responsibility.
I don't drive.
That's stuff like that's more. I mean, I have a driving license, as Darren knows. I used to drive many years ago, but now I just think I've really, as you get older, you realise what a big responsibility it is, and I just don't want any part of it.
Well, you're firing a 2,000-pound missile down a road. It's effectively.
Yeah.
I don't. When I lived in America, I drove because you have to. But my time of living in England, I've never driven.
No, I mean, it is, and the older you get, the more you realise stuff like that. I mean, I've never even had so much as I've never even had so much as a speeding ticket. I have a perfectly clean record. I mean, Darren knows we've driven all over the place to get him in the passenger seat.
Yeah, but you have,
but you know, I wasn't a bad driver. I wasn't particularly fast or anything like that. But just as I've got older, I realised what a big and how in the blink of an eye something like that can just happen.
Yeah,
and that's it. Your life changes forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The lives of other people. Prince Naz was obviously, he did go to prison, didn't he?
Well, that was a terrible thing. He was showing off in his Ferrari or something, and he was going on a one-way street, and he smashed into some guy who was in there with his missus, and the bloke had life-changing injuries. I mean, and Hamad did about 45 days in the nick. It should have been about 5 or 6 years.
Well, he should have done something with years on the end for sure. Yeah, it was a year or two or whatever. That's interesting. So maybe we're back on Pat Brown's show again. I do watch that sometimes because she's got a very forensic mind, and I like the way that she follows the evidence, and she doesn't do anything around gut fear or anything like that. She's very she's very sort of very forensic in the way she approaches cases, and she's very very logically consistent. I always like that in a person when they're logically consistent.
I remember seeing her when I lived in America, which was I moved there in 1998, and I came back in 2002. And she was always popping up on shows like, Fox News or CNN, or for a little 5-minute segment. Here we have criminal profiler Pat Brown. What do you think of this guy, the Unabomber, or whoever the hell it was I'm talking about? And then I got to know her because she did she was interviewed about the Madeleine McCann case, and I thought her breakdown of it was really impressive. So when she started a YouTube channel, I said, I used to watch you on TV, and I think you're terrific, and we started corresponding, and I ended up on her show. I mean, this was when her YouTube channel started. I think she's got about 60,000 subscribers now. But she deserves it. She's fantastic.
But she should be back on, mate. She should, absolutely. It's slightly bigger than this channel, I'll admit it. So we've got about 60 subscribers, you know.
Quality, not quantity, mate.
There it is. It's always, yes, yeah, you don't want a mass audience, well, unless you do. Yes, that's interesting. We could maybe wrap up with this one. I mean, like, the McCann case is interesting because I know you kind of talk about. I know you've kind of you mentioned the term conspiracy theorists as a pejorative occasionally because conspiracy theorists, when they get out of hand and they become like professional conspiracy theorists, they can get cranky and weird, can't they?
Yeah.
But very often I find that the narrative was spun about things isn't quite true. I think the McCann case is a good example where. You know, like I said, like with the Carter thing, right? It's balance of probability. It's based on the others, neither as a statement, anything as a fact, right? But for me, the McCann thing, I don't believe the story that they tell, and I don't believe there was ever an abduction, and I think they know more than they've ever let on. That's my opinion.
I know from the Portuguese side, from the Spanish, I saw a Spanish documentary about it. And basically, this is an oversimplification, but what the Portuguese police basically said is they said, okay, this is who we think did it. We think they did it, and we're naming them as suspects. The British government and the British police basically went, no, we don't think it's them. And then the Portuguese police sort of went, look, you've sort of killed one of your own. You deal with it. And the McCanns just sort of got away with it or got away with being questioned on that front because the Portuguese police just went, look, you deal with it. It's your problem. We've told you what we think. If you don't want to believe it, over to you. Well,
I forget the official title. The guy, the main investigator, if you like, Portuguese guy.
Giancarlo Amaral.
Amaral, yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote a book saying that
he did.
First of all, there was no evidence that she was abducted, none whatsoever. Okay, footprints, fingerprints, no, nothing. Okay, and the theory, if you investigate a crime, what you do is you assess the evidence and you piece it together to say what is the most likely scenario. Well, if you consider that cadaver dogs were brought in, they sniffed behind the sofa, they sniffed the car, you know, the McCanns were using. The theory is, and I think it's something that is quite likely, again, I don't have any evidence, I'm just chewing the fat here, but the little girl was, they probably gave their kids a little sedative to shut them up while they were going and having their tapas. And the little girl got up, she heard her father talking to someone outside, which has been verified because he went to check on the kids and then he bumped into her mate and started talking. She got onto the sofa, fell behind the sofa, died of asphyxiation, and then the parents, because they were both doctors, I think they could have been struck off. That's the theory, that they kind of covered it up, got rid of her body, and kept quiet about it. Now that may be absolute bull, it may be completely wrong, but that is what the evidence points towards, that type of scenario where they knew something. There's no evidence for an abduction, none whatsoever.
No, that's what I'd say. Anything we're saying here is a hypothesis, not a statement of fact. Just because I know they're quite litigious people, both of them. So, yeah, and that fighting fund needs topping up, apparently.
Well, Pat Brown had her book taken off Amazon because Carter Ruck, who were their lawyers, threatened to sue Amazon if they didn't remove Pat's book. Pat's actually got a version of it, a spoken word version on YouTube, and it's very much worth your time listening to it. Because even she will say, and I'm not saying they did it, I'm saying this is what the evidence shows, because she has that forensic attitude.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, based on the evidence seen, this is we're a gambling man. This is what I bet on. All I've ever thought is just look at the key questions in here. So, one, do you believe what they said? No, I don't. I don't believe it was an abduction. So, I think that if they've made that up, they must know more than they're letting on. There must be something that they don't want you to find out. The other important thing is, you know, it's Operation Grange, which is based on here, which is a very strange operation indeed on a couple of counts. One, this is actually a Portuguese case. Yeah, so it should be up to the Portuguese police, you know, whether it gets reopened and for what purpose. And we shouldn't be investigating it because the British police don't have the capacity to charge anybody with a crime. Only the Portuguese can do that.
Yeah.
So it poses a question as to what Operation Grange was ever about. Because the other thing with Operation Grange, and Pat Brown's alluded to this, is they've ruled out any suggestion that the McCanns know more than they've let on. or involved in any way. They said we're only looking at an abduction, so it's kind of weird. And the other thing is, I know you've seen this, but Christian Bruckner, the guy, the new guy, he did it. He was cleared this week of other charges in the German. Yeah, there's no evidence, absolutely no evidence. I saw your reaction there when I mentioned the name. And, Bruckner, I even put on Pat Brown's channel the same thing. There's no evidence, and she said it herself, there's no evidence whatsoever that Bruckner's involved in any way.
I mean, he's a rapist. He's a rapist, and he might well be killed. But he abducted Madeleine McCann.
Yeah, he's a bad dude. I think we can agree on that. But there's no evidence he did this or had anything to do with this.
Yeah,
not whatsoever.
That the German guy.
Yeah. But this is the wheel out a new suspect every few years. They originally tried to pin it on a guy who turned out to be a tourist.
Wasn't there? The parents had been dining with a former MP. I think he might have been a Liberal Democrat who was known to be. I think was his name Clement
Freud.
Yeah.
Is he a relative of Sigmund Freud? Isn't he a distant relative of Sigmund Freud?
No, a grandson or something. I think. I think he was a known. I don't know how to word this, but he was known to be someone you don't want. I don't know what you can say and you can't say. I'm trying to think about.
So it's a man of certain unhealthy proclivities. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think.
I don't mean junk food either. Right.
Well, I mean, look at his Wikipedia profile.
I think I know what you're referring to. Yeah, that's right. So I get that, but it's. Yeah, it's one of those where we could go through a list of those with some I guess the ones what you believe happened in certain cases, but I don't think that would be getting solved, the McCann thing. I just don't think
no
ever
no way.
Even if they found her body, what are they going to do? Unless she's wrapped up in something that proven it was
Lord Luke. More chance finding Lord Luke.
Yeah, he was legally declared dead a few years back, wasn't he? I think did his son get the title as well? I think that's the other news on it.
Really?
Yeah, his son gets to inherit the title if his dad's declared dead. Yeah. Because he was never actually convicted of anything either, was he, Lord Luke? He was just prime suspect.
Been aired, didn't he?
He supposedly, the theory is, I think he threw himself off a ferry when he was trying to escape to France because he. Having murdered the babysitter or whatever it was. Yeah. We'll never know.
The other theory is that he ran off on the back of Shergar. So.
Yeah.
Then jumped on Robert Maxwell's yacht. Just a quick one for you, Joe. Is there any boxing shows you will be looking forward to this weekend or in the near future that you want to?
This weekend is Bonanza time. This is Bivol versus Turbiev, which is for the undisputed light heavyweight title, which is a major event, a major historical fight, because it will all four belts of the so-called main four are on offer. My prediction is Bivol wins on points, but my predictions haven't been great lately. I thought Joshua would beat Dubois, so but the undercard's pretty decent as well. So have a look at it.
So that's if you've got a good show, a proper show, that's always gone.
May I ask Joe just one more question before he goes?
Sure.
One more, go on.
What are your thoughts? Have you ever had any interaction with Anthony Ogogo?
Anthony Ogogo, yeah, he retired due to an eye injury. Sorry?
His eye? Was it one of his eyes? I can't remember.
Right, yeah, he had an eye injury and he spent about $100,000 trying to get it fixed, going to America with specialists. He then sort of reinvented himself as a wrestler.
Yes,
quite successful in America.
He's done very well. Yeah, he got on the card with Cody Rhodes.
I'm delighted about that because he's a nice fella, Anthony Ogogo.
He's done really well for himself in wrestling, and I think he's moving into a backstage role, but he does have the occasional bout, and he's very good. He's very charismatic, very good-looking guy. He's made for it. He's made for wrestling.
Well, he signed when he turned pro after the Olympics. He won a bronze medal at the Olympics. He turned pro with Golden Boy, Oscar de la Hoya's outfit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he had a lot of injuries, not just the eye injury. The eye injury was the one that that finished him as a fighter. But
Yeah.
he hasn't lost vision in it. He can still see, but the it is busted up. You know?
He's taken to wrestling like a duck to water, and he's really got that cocky British heel. I'm really good, and I'm also impossible to like. And he gets booed out of the building, and he's just fantastic. And he loves it. He loves it. He's fantastic.
That's great. That's really good.
He cuts promos about saying if anyone says soccer, I'm going to knock them out.
Good for him.
He's brilliant. He really, really does. You can tell he sort of watched those William Regal WCW mid-90s promos, and he does live up to it. And because he's good looking, it almost makes him more unlikable. And the fact that he's really good, and he sort of generally disposes of jobbers inside a minute. He's the total package. He's brilliant.
Yeah. I think he's in his 30s now, is he? He must be about 38 now. Maybe I'm.
He's I think he's just had a son. From what I think. Yeah. But he's getting a very decent wage because Tony Khan, he's not bad at paying. So
he deserves it. He's a nice fellow.
We're getting a good wage off Tony Khan, yeah.
Good.
There was one you'd have liked actually. William Regal, when he was called Lord. So, like you're a wrestling guy or not, but when he was called Lord Stephen Regal originally, when he was on the other, when he was on the other leading brand, and there was a great. You'd have loved this promo because they made a promo where they said, "Stephen, you've been spending time with Sarah Ferguson. I'm told. How was that?" And he said, quotes. Honestly, it was like spending the night with a ripped-out fireplace. and you see, was it Mean Gene Oakland? Gene Oakland. He's doing what I was doing. He's muffling his laughter, you know. And did you tell me that he got a phone call, Largo?
Yeah, he got a phone call off MI5 or something. He said it. He obviously he's a full-time trainer now, but for a brief time he had the Gentleman Villain podcast, and on that podcast he said he got a very sinister phone call of somebody claiming to be from that, and he said by the tone of the voice, I believed them. By the way it was worded, and he says sometimes you can tell when it's just like a loony, but he said there was something in this. I sort of believed it.
Yeah, so
it wasn't over exaggerated. There wasn't a lot of emotion in it. It was just stop doing what you're doing, or you're going to regret it.
Right. So, yeah, there's a very
my wrestling anecdote. You'll know. I mean, I go back to watching wrestling on World of Sport in the afternoon.
Yeah,
you know,
let's kill it. Absolutely.
Yeah. My father, who I never really knew, I have vague memories of him because my parents weren't married. He was a wrestler, and this was before it came onto TV. It was in the clubs. I mean, it's proper wrestling, not big
no, like holds, all in catch wrestling.
And my mother told me a story which is quite amusing. She said that when they first started dating, he took her to this wrestling club, and he was fighting Mick McManus, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And he was getting the crap beaten out of him. So between rounds, when they gave him the water bottle, he drank the lot because he was so knackered, which of course you're not meant to do.
Get stitched.
Yeah. And then he ended up puking it all up on the canvas.
No.
The relationship went from there. What can you say?
Yeah. Thank God that happened before cameras.
Yeah, and apart from that, it was a magical evening.
It was lovely. He made him and took it from there. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, that's something you get ribbed about.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick ones before we wrap up. Actually, Joe, thanks so much for coming on the show, mate. And
thank you.
It's been fantastic, and we'll do a lot of series 2 next year, and we'll definitely get sort of.
And thanks for accommodating my ignorance on boxing.
Oh no, you're welcome. More than welcome. It's been interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want me to answer your question about the box?
Well, there's a couple of quick things because you're also a songwriter as well. So I just wonder, is there anywhere that anyone can see your songs online or your music online, or is there just anything you want to tell us about it? Really?
Well, there's a ton of it on Joe Stunner Music, which is my other show. I haven't put anything on there for about 5 years because this is something that I still write and I still play guitar and do all that stuff, but I just haven't. I can't be. I'm just too busy to do all these things. You know, I'm busy with work and so on. But I could. I made albums. You know, CDs. I never pressed any vinyl. We were slightly too late for that. And that goes from like 1992 up to about the last one I did was a solo project, and that was 2015. So there's a lot of stuff on there under different guises on Joestown Music. But I love it. It's very therapeutic, you know. It's not actually. I mean, I can say, well, you know, I've written some great songs, and I've written some poor songs, and most of them are somewhere in the middle. But it's the actual process of being creative that is really
yeah. Yeah, it's amazing when you get in that creative process, whether whatever you're doing. You obviously I've sent some of my stuff as well. It's like that when you get into that, you can lose a day really quickly as well. You can kind of it just shoots by, you know. And if it can just it's what some of the best fun you'll ever have being creative. It really is. It just the day just disappears. So
I'll post a couple of vids on my Facebook page if you want to have a look at them, and that'll give
if you want to, but I'll check that out. That's on YouTube, a music channel, so I'll check that out as well.
Yeah, not just my stuff. I've put other like bands that I like. I've put live clips and all sorts of crap on there, but it didn't get monetized though because they said it's quite funny because these were the days when YouTube was kind of the Wild West. You can put whatever you like on there. And a lot of my stuff is quite, you know, it's about social issues, political issues, and so on. And there's a lot of rather rude language and all that sort of thing. And then 10, 15 years later, I keep getting these notifications saying, we have removed your video 10 years after the fact. You know, oh, by the way, have you considered if you are struggling in life? And then they send me all these. I'm like, you know, you don't get down about me, you know, you just. It's this. Unfortunately, YouTube has become this. Sort
of did that to. I think they did that to Ice-T with his song his band Body Count with the song Sea Killer.
Right.
Law enforcement officer.
Right. I put all my band stuff on a Rumble account because they'll let anything go.
Yeah.
No, great. I would definitely go and check some more of your stuff out because actually next week's guest is another musician, Lee Richards, who's from my neck of the woods, and he's actually not been under the weather recently because I think he's been working too hard. He's always out gigging. He's always out either creating or gigging, and you know that's often the way when you're a musician. It's just and you've got a full-time job as well. It's just, you don't get a minute, do you?
I do miss playing live. I haven't done a gig since about 2010 or something like that. But some of those gigs some of them were awful. We were under rehearsed and we were just crap. And other ones, they're very memorable and a lot of fun. So I miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's doing that live thing. That live thing goes right as well. That whole experience is great. It's fantastic. The atmosphere and there's a vibe there. So yeah, definitely. Like I said, thanks for coming on. We'll definitely be back if you want to be back, without a doubt. Hopefully, we'll be back on Pat Brown as well.
Yeah, could have a word with Pat. Yeah.
And Joe, if you do see Matt Legg, do pass on my regards because I think what he's doing on his YouTube channel and the videos he's done on wrestling are absolutely first class.
I've never met him.
Okay.
But if I see him at a show, I'll definitely tell him.
I think his YouTube channel is just outstanding.
I mean, he knows a lot of faces in London. You know, a lot of the shadier people, shall we say, as well. But,
right.
Some boxers do.
Yes.
He's clearly also a wrestling fan, and the way he approaches the video is sort of very. It's done in a sort of loving, classy way that a lot of people don't, that you would, particularly people from the boxing world, you wouldn't expect them to be so generous to wrestlers.
If you go into any boxing gym, 99 times out of 100, they'll be really nice to you because they can fight. They don't have to. I
think at the end of the day, with boxing, what you are doing is you're putting yourself up there. Whatever, even never mind the fact that boxing hurts, you are putting yourself up there for public scrutiny.
Absolutely,
that's a big thing. That's something that cannot be underestimated. I think it's incredibly brave to put yourself up for that amount.
Genuinely tough people don't have to act the heart, man, do they? I've noticed that from the time I spent in boxing gyms when I was in my 20s. You didn't get. You got the odd one, but you got very few like knobheads or anything like that. Most of the people in there are very respectful to each other, and because that's the thing about this sport. It's like once you've been. How many times have you seen this, Joe? Where you get two fighters, they trash each other at a press conference, they actually fight and they embrace at the end of the fight. Because they've earned that respect from each other. Because how else can you feel about somebody? You've taken your punches for 36 minutes, and you've taken theirs, and you're both still there at the end of the fight. You cannot.
How do you account for Paul Sykes, though? I mean, that guy was clearly hard, but my God, what a bully!
Well, yeah.
Paul Sykes. I know he had professional fights, but he wasn't really he wasn't from the boxing background. He was a very damaged human being. I think his sons are doing life, aren't they, for murder or something?
Yeah.
It's a shame.
But they didn't stand a chance, really.
No, he was a damaged guy, Paul Sykes. Very damaged.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel conflicted about talking about Paul Sykes, Joe, because on the one hand, I understand it's quite interesting to talk about somebody like him because of his complicated psychology and things like that. On the other, I think he did some very bad things to other people. He was a very violent man, and not even when he was out of prison, he would actually terrorize. He was a bully, he was a thug, and he would terrorize people in Wakefield. He would terrorize people in pubs and everything.
Yeah, you just walk up to someone and take the pint, spit in it, and go, "My pint now."
Yeah, there's a very fine line, I think, between taking an interest in the psychology of a guy like Paul Sykes and actually engaging in what I call crime porn. There's this kind of glamorization of bad people. And there's a lot of that about gangsters. A lot of that. If I watch another movie about the Crays or football hooligans, I'll scream. It's crazy.
Well, it's fascinating from a psychological point of view, but it's not to be glamorized. If you go,
and me have had the conversation before.
There's a guy called Michael Francesi who has a channel. He's a former made man. He was a capo regime in the mafia, and he's about 70 now, 72. He comes across as a perfect gentleman, and he talks about his days in the mafia. But he says, I don't mean to glamorize it. I'm telling you, this was wrong. This destroyed families. We were beholden to this code where we supposedly had to put it before our family, and anyone who romanticizes violence or poverty or anything like that has never really lived it. They don't really understand it.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know. I'm just trying to think. Going back, I used to be friendly with a girl who was, she was a bit of a rich bitch, to use the term, but she liked to go slumming. Basically, she liked rough men as well.
Princess Anne.
Right, so she liked to go to the rough part. She'd go out with the pub thug or the drug dealer or whatever.
Yeah.
But the reality about people like this is a bit like these people who go to anti-capitalist protests. These middle class people, and they go home to big houses with mum and dad again.
Are you referring to me?
But for this girl, it's quite clear that if a real fighter broke now, it's a bit like the song "Common People," isn't it? If a real fight had broken out, she'd have shat her pants. What I mean? That's the thing about this. You can't glamorize that life. I think that's very much a middle class thing actually as well. When they go into, it's almost like slumming by proxy. They're doing it behind the remote control and
poverty safari.
Yeah.
There was a guy in London. He was actually a famous actor. His name was John Bindon. And he was Home, and he was in the Sweeney, and he was a big face but he was a proper villain as well. And he was always getting into rough and tumble stuff. Very, very, very well known in London. A real thug. Could have a fight. I mean, he was a genuine tough guy.
Yeah.
But, he ended up. His girlfriend was Vicky Hodge, who was from some sort of aristocratic background. And she fit perfectly what you were saying about, the middle class. Well, not she, the rough guy, just because she thinks it's romantic. And in fact, Bindon ended up hanging out with Princess Margaret. There was a bit of controversy.
Didn't Bindon get tried for murder as well?
Yes, he had a fight, a fatal knife fight with Johnny Dark in Waterloo Way, I think. I don't know, I can't remember the venue. But they got into a knife fight, and Bindon very badly, he almost died. But he killed Dark.
But I think it was acquitted. He was found not guilty, wasn't it?
They had Bob Hoskins and a few other people, as references for him, because his name was Biffo. They used to call him Biffo Bindon.
Speaking of Bob
I was just going to say one other thing. Sorry, Marco. Do you know what about John Bindon? Have you got all of Morrissey's records?
Say again?
Have you got all of Morrissey's records?
Yeah, he wrote a song about Bindon, but it was never released, was it?
Right, but but if you look on Man Adjusted, the album with Alma Matters on it.
Okay.
On the notes on the inside it says R.I.P. John Bindon from when he died.
Oh yes, yeah.
So
he died of AIDS. Bindon died of AIDS.
He did, yeah. So it must have been putting it about as well.
Oh yeah, he was famous for his very large appendage, right? And beer mugs off it, 3 or 4 beer glasses off it. This party trick. Now, not something I want, not an image I want in my head, but that's what he used to do.
Right. Yeah. So it wasn't the first to put it about. It sounds like he'd get it on with a slow puncture behaviour. Right.
I was going to say the dynamic of the rich, upper class, posh woman like Princess Margaret and the gangster thug is actually referenced in one of my favourite films, a very good film called The Long Good Friday, with Bob Hoskins, and his girlfriend or his partner or wife is played quite brilliantly by Helen Mirren, who's clearly this rich, upper class, old money, and a boyfriend or a husband is like this new money, possibly from some Jewish slum of London, like sort of up and coming, ambitious upstart. But at the same time, he's a he's a killer. He's a stone cold killer, and that dynamic is played quite brilliantly by Helen Mirren and Bob Hoskins, 2 outstanding actors.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a great movie, and I think Hoskins' character, who the name escapes me, the character now, he was based on Freddie Foreman, who was
right. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that, and the ending is just like, whoa, brilliant
ending. The back of the car, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
brilliant acting by Hoskins. Brilliant acting.
Oh, everything about that film's perfect. Yeah. Just London at that time and place, just as the docks had been, was it the London Docklands? The docks had been shut, and it was basically the Wild West. Whoever wants it can have it. Everything was up for grabs.
They were trying to get the land to build on it so they could make money, and that is what the backs. He invited the mafia over. He wanted some of their money,
and then he frightened them off.
Yeah.
And the mafia were like, "This place is insane. Like we just don't want anything to do with it." Like the mafia are turning around to like the London, these people like Freddie Foreman, going, "This is insane. We're having nothing to do with you. You're crazy."
Yeah.
I'm just conscious of the time. I'm just. Like I said, Joe, thanks, mate. It's been amazing. Thanks for everything between the two of you, the film recommendations and a lot. I've just have one little piece of thing to sort out. I think just before we wrap up, unless there's anything else anyone wants to add quickly.
No, I was going to ask some questions about Francis Ngannou, but that can wait.
Francis Ngannou. Right. Well, that's the best 0-2 record in boxing, I've got to say.
Yeah,
well, at least you can say it was the best performance by any debutant in the history of boxing, because he put Fury on the floor and lost I think he did lose the fight, but he put up a fantastic performance. The Joshua fight less so, but he's a terrific, very, very.
I was going to say his personal story is fascinating.
It is
absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's paid well for that because, like you say, he came from absolute dirt.
Oh god, he was homeless on the streets of Paris.
Yeah,
that's not a place you want to be homeless. It's rough. It's rough.
And there, the similarity between Francis Ngannou and the guys of Milli Vanilli end. They were both once homeless in France. There, the similarities end. Like I said, thanks a lot. We'll definitely have lots and lots of our guests back for another round.
Oh yeah, we look forward to this.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about various things. So yeah, if you you know, don't you do lives on your stream, you're either as a July will be up to that as well.
All I'll say is,
on for live.
All I'll say is I was going to go out, but I'm listening, and I just had a voice tell me to stay in. Because sometimes I get these sort of messages: "Don't go out tonight, stay in." So instead, I'm just going to stay in, have a few glasses of wine, and watch Chris Eubank on Top of the Pops.
Yes.
on repeat.
I was in two minds. Should I go out? Shouldn't? And I was getting a message like, "No, stay in. Don't go out. You'll get punched or something." You know how it goes when you drink a bit too much. And instead, I'm just going to stay in and watch Chris Eubank on Top of the Pops.
Well, there you go. Right. Well, there you go. Right. Well, where we live, you know, people just kick the wheelie bins over and everything. I mean, I've got revelers coming down my street all the time.
Well, you know me. I like chatting to ladies, but like sometimes other blokes don't like you chatting to ladies. And
you mean like the ones they're married to and things like that?
I don't know. I don't do it. I just like chatting. I'm how it goes. You know what I'm like. I'm not bad.
Yeah.
I'm not bad at what I do.
What is it you do?
I
tell you what, being serious. I tell you what, I would hate to be a young person now, like, you know, a person in the 20s now, because I think the dating world's an absolute cesspit. You know, there are so many people going into the dating world.
Hell no.
Going into the dating world with a terrible attitude, a lousy attitude, a sense of entitlement and all that. And I just think, you know, I feel sorry for any decent person in the 20s now.
It's kind of like I don't know. It's dating's kind of turned into Championship Manager.
It's turned into like QVC and it's turned into QVC and the diamonds are about as real. You know, so.
You know, and then you get someone like me, like old school guy, just goes out and says like, "Hey, how you doing?" And if there's chemistry, you talk, and that's that. And some people,
and then you get busted for being a sex pest or something.
Well, I don't.
It's different in Spain. It's different in Spain. The whole scene in Spain is different to the UK. The culture is different. Everything is different.
What part of Spain are you in?
Sevilla.
Okay, I've not been there.
Seville.
Oh, Sevilla. No, I've not been there, but yeah.
I mean, Spain is completely different to the UK. You can just go up to people. Hey, how are you? How's it going? And it's to say it's probably more similar to France than the UK. It's a lot more social. Whereas in the UK, that kind of just going out, walking into a pub, nodding at people, how's it going? Like that in the UK would just be an anathema. Whereas in Spain, someone will just walk into a bar. There'll be people sitting in the bar, and they'll just start going, "Hola, ¿qué tal? Hola, buenas tardes."
Well, yeah, but I think to be fair, I would say I'm like a broad brushstroke about the UK in that respect. It does depend where you go and who you say it to. You know, I don't have an idea of who I could maybe talk to in a bar and who I couldn't. Yeah.
Sure.
It's finding who you might have a bit of common ground with, or be able to have a conversation with, or somebody who's watching the same football match or whatever as you. So if that voice in your head is telling you to stay in and watch the Chris Eubank thing on repeat, maybe listen to him, or her. Could be her.
I mean, I haven't been punched this calendar year, so.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Let's see if we can make it a whole year without being punched in the face. It'd be, yeah.
You haven't got long. Haven't a couple
of
months.
You know.
Yeah, it'd be like, that's an advent calendar with a difference, isn't it? Right. So. I tell you what, that is so funny, that Joe. You know, I won't say the whole thing out loud, but you know, you won the laugh of the month award with me with that 1 minute. That meme that ends with Pingu's beak, and it's one of the funniest things. I can only tell you in private. If I repeat that on the internet, I'll get thrown off the internet.
Well, hopefully, I'm planning on. I've bought my flight back, so we should have a meet up over Christmas.
Yeah, it should do. Hopefully our mate will be down as well, and we'll catch him.
Yeah, we should have like we should organise something or an invitation, extend an invitation to all the people that have been on our been kind enough to come on our little live streams.
It's been great. It's been fantastic. I wish there were more people watching. I do, but I mean, what I think will happen is these things will end up, in an archive somewhere, and someone will stumble on them and go, "Actually, these are pretty good. These are better than 90% of the things on the net."
Yeah,
it might happen in 5 years. You get. Joe will tell you, you get musicians who get famous after they die. You get.
sure.
It's been quite a few. Been quite a few who've died and got famous afterwards.
What's it called? The rhythm and blues guitarist. He died like completely penitent. Robert Johnson, I think he was called.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's like referenced by almost like Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, the Beatles, Rolling Stones. If it hadn't been for him, they wouldn't have existed. And he died like I think before he was 50. Penniless.
Yeah.
He died in the Beat South.
Yeah, and another obvious one would be someone like Nick Drake. Yeah.
Nick Drake.
Yeah, way more famous dead than he ever was alive. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's the thing. Sometimes things, and you don't. It's like you said about quality over quantity, John. So I'd rather have 200 interested people watch than 20,000 people who were clickbaiting.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, well, were you making these with the objective of generating income, or?
No, certainly that wasn't the intention, because I think there's Joe think will agree with me on this. I think there's far too many grifters on the internet anyway. There's far too many people talking about things.
If there's ever any cash we do generate off this, it's all yours, man. It's all you do. Maybe we can pay our guests. I don't know, but I don't go into anything like this with money. Because I think once you get into that mindset, everything's about making money. It contaminates your thinking. Your brain becomes full of pound signs. Joe,
last month I had about 50,000 views on Joe Stunner Boxing, and I ended up with 84 quid. So it's not exactly like we're going to become rich over this. You've got to get millions and millions of views. I mean, someone like G-Man, who I know quite well, he earns decent money. Not great money, but decent money, to where he might only have to work part-time, say. But he gets got more views than I do. I mean,
we're both subscribers to G-Man, aren't we? So
I've got just under 5,000. He's got over 20,000. So, but it's done on views. The revenue's done on views.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's
prepared to amend what I say. Like people have asked me this. Why don't you get accreditation for gigs and for boxing shows? I probably could, but no. But I'm not going to go there and then suck up to anyone because they're giving me a press pass. I don't really care about that.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. I mean, I've done that for a couple of boxing websites in the past, but it's interesting because you have to. You feel, I don't know, when you do that, it's like you feel you have to write favourable reviews of the fighters. That makes any sense. It's like you feel compromised, because they got you in the first place. It's like when you got to do a review of the show, you have to almost show that you can't be completely honest. If it was a crap show, you can't say that.
Well, G-Man has just moved to London, and he's got a connection with DAZN, where he's doing some work, almost like freelance. I think I don't know the exact details, but he'll advertise their shows. But if you watch his videos, he won't. If something's shite, he'll say it's rubbish. He won't suck up to them. And it's like Adi Oladipo. I remember him. He's a regular on DAZN now. He's a regular presenter, and he's one of the main presenters on DAZN. I remember him when he had a little YouTube channel called Box Talk with his friend Ryan, and they had 3, 4, 5,000 subscribers or whatever. It was a great little channel. But now he's flying. Now he's a real proper established broadcaster earning big money. But if you watch his YouTube channel, he still says what he thinks. It's as if they've said, you mustn't say this, you mustn't say that. Now, on the day, if he goes to a big show, they might not put him with certain people, if you know what I mean, because he's. Yeah. But he still says what he likes on his YouTube channel. Yeah,
well, that's always been that's sort of the worry, isn't it? About if you tell the truth and the truth is what certain people want to hear, could it affect the way you get treated in the future? It's a natural thing to have at the back of your mind. Yeah, so there's just one. I think it might just be one thing to wrap up. Mate, you've been going on for nearly 2 hours, so thank you Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, that's really flown. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, shot back.
Joe, I was just going to ask, what part of London are you based in?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not in London at the moment. I'm from London. I'm in Peterborough at the moment. Have been
lovely. Peterborough.
Yeah, Peter Bog Horror.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be too rude about someone else's city, but it's
know.
Kind of like Chav Central. Do you know what I mean?
Sounds
nice.
Oh
God, right.
It's a lovely cathedral. It's beautiful cathedral.
It sounds like a sort of home counties type place. Yeah.
It may have been in the past.
It was a market town or market city originally. It does have the beautiful cathedral and the surrounding buildings, but some brain fart decided they were going to build a shopping centre in front of the cathedral and pour concrete all over the city centre and make it a pedestrianised area, and it's horrible.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so there was just one last thing, I think, which was the answer to our trivia question. So the question was, can you name the first British fighter to win a version of the World Super Middleweight Championship? And Joe, do you want to give us the answer, please, mate?
Murray Sutherland of Scotland.
Yeah.
Who I believe he was the first super middleweight champion from any with any belt. Because I remember I predate the super middleweight division and the cruiserweight division, and they were considered like there's a new division at the moment called Bridgerweight, which I don't think is a take off, but at the same time it's like a super cruiserweight division. But I don't think it will take off. But at the time, no one knew who Murray Sutherland was. He won the belt. No one cared about him, but he was a pretty decent fighter. He fought some good men.
Did he lose to a Korean guy in his first defence or something?
I'm doing this off memory. Yeah, Duk Kim, maybe. I know who you're talking about. I think I can't remember.
I think it was a Korean guy who took the belt off him, wasn't it?
It might be. Yeah. I can't remember the name. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So that was it. The answer was Murray Sutherland. So yeah, thank you, Joe. You knew the answer. I knew you'd know it. But a lot, you'll be amazed how often you get Ben Eubank.
Pardon?
Yeah, the number of times when you ask that question, they give you the answers either Nigel Benn or Chris Eubank. You know, that's.
Yeah.
Am I Nigel Benn or Chris? I would probably go with Dark Destroyer Nigel Benn.
Well, that's it. So when you ask that question, they're the two answers that you always get from people. But it's not. It's Nigel Bells. It's Murray Sutherland.
We've done well in that division. The UK.
Yeah.
We've done very well. We've had Robin Reed held a belt. Richie Woodall.
Glenn Catney out on as well.
WBC champ. Yeah. That's right. So good ones.
It's surprising how many British middleweight champions have been. And how many others have fought for the world title. So it's one of those divisions. I don't know what it is. We seem to excel at. We've always, until right now. I don't see it happening right now. But right through to like George Groves and Carl Froch, and in the not so distant past, we've always been very strong at that division ever since the late 80s. Yeah, so we've had Joe being the best, probably been the best of the bunch.
Yeah, Kawasaki was very good.
It was indeed. Yeah. So right. So we've. I think that'll be all for tonight. So no, I just want to thank our guest again and Margot, and we'll catch you next week's episode where the guest will be Lee Richards. Lee Richards, his album came out today, so we'll be discussing that and his general music career and performances.
As I told you, next week's going to be a bit of a struggle for me, but I'll do the extra Saturday.
Right. Okay. Well, it's okay. Well, I can talk to Lee. So if you want to do a quick special on Saturday where it's just you and me talking for an hour.
It doesn't have to be quick. It doesn't have to be quick.
It might be for me because I might need to go to the toilet or something.
No, I mean, like I say, I've always got that voice that sounds like Tony Schiavone telling me when to stay in and when not to have another shot.
It sounds like Tony Schiavone.
Yeah. That's enough, buddy.
It should sound like Jesse the Body Ventura, but I'll leave it at that.
That's before my time. Thank you very much.
Jesse the Body Ventura.
I saw his films. I've never seen him. Well, I think maybe I saw like a SummerSlam with him or something. you know, on VHS. But I never saw Saturday Night Live. That's way before my time.
Right, there you go. Right, yeah, Joe. Anything else from you, mate? I think
Thank you for having me on. Really, really interesting. Time's flown, and thanks. Nice to meet you both.
Love it. Yes, likewise.
Love it, and thanks for answering my questions.
No worries.
Okay, mate. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Right, that'll be all for now. Just want to say night, everybody. Take care, and yeah, see you for the next one. Thank you.
Good night.
Right, Joe.
Are we still live or not? It's still ticking.
Oh.